Today, I am with Jo Encarnacion, aka the Queen of Messy Conversations, who has dared to lead hundreds of women down a path of radical self acceptance, gaining her recognition by CEO of Thrive Global, Arianna Huffington, as one of the top 20 health and wellness role models. She has pivoted through many different career paths in her lifetime and is the founder today of GOFITJO, which has amassed a following of over 80,000 people and a thriving blog of 20,000 readers a month. Her mission is to help women release their shame and create pleasure and play in their relationships to experience healthy, sensual bliss in their lives. Welcome, Jo.
Hey, thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been such an admire. How do you say that?
Admirer, I think.
Admirer. Yo, we were going back and forth for some time about how to correctly pronounce Joe's last name. It's like, dang,
I mean,
colonized
words
last
are
name.
hard, you know? Words are hard. Words are difficult.
I was like, Encarnacion. Yeah, that's a strong. I was like, strong. Oh, okay, we'll go
It's a
into your
strong
ancestral.
Spanish name.
Yes, colonizer last name, okay, but I have been an admirer of the ways that you show up on social media and just how you have been willing to share with us the mess, but also the medicine within the mess.
Mm-hmm.
So, first question I'd love to ask everybody is, where is it that you're currently calling home? And in your own words, how would you describe your medicine?
Yeah, so I'm currently calling home right now in the East Bay of California. Next location, who the fuck really knows, which I'm really excited about and also really nervous about. And what would I call my medicine? I think it's interesting when I think about my stories being medicine. I remember being 16 years old after my suicide attempt from depression and sexual assault. And I remember thinking through therapy, like, fuck, I go through all this shit in my life and it has to be for a purpose and a reason. There has to be a reason why I go through this so that I'm able to share this to the world because we can't be alone in our shit storms. We can't be alone in our mess. We can't be alone in the arena. And so I think what would I call my medicine? If there's a word to call it or describe it, I think or a phrase, I guess, would be like a relentlessly beautiful life and the mess and the beauty of it all. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. How many of us are feeling confined to just stick with one medicine and prove to the end that this is it, and yet you are embodying that we're going to evolve throughout our lives. And I'm just imagining so many people who are staying stagnant in their situation and saying, like, I don't want to experience any of the pain that may come with pursuing a dream I may never see come to life in the physical realm. And so I'm just going to stay comfortable, quote unquote comfortable. And I think that for many of us whose parents immigrated here, there's an added pressure to be
Mhm.
able to stay safe,
Mhm.
whatever that is.
To not rock the boat.
Not rock the boat. So tell us about your own ancestral lineage and how that has influenced where you are today.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm first generation Filipino-American. My parents actually traveled here from the Philippines when my mom was 8 months pregnant. So she had this intention already of like, I'm going to have an American born child. And I am the youngest of three kids in my family, and both my brother and sister were born and raised in the Philippines. And I actually didn't get to like formalize any core memories with them until I was 10 and 12 because they lived in the Philippines that entire time. And so I grew up pretty much what I thought was alone. At least that's what I experienced, right? Like I knew I had a brother and sister, but I experienced growing up being raised as like an only child. And so with that upbringing, my parents, I like to refer to myself as like a third culture kid. And so, you have this culture that your parents are raising you with, which as a first generation child, you're being raised with values that are from a different country, from a different time, from a different era, from a different generation. And then you're being like dropped into American culture, and your parents are trying to figure out, how the fuck do we raise this child? Like, what values do we instill in them? And then what are they being influenced by? And they're so, I mean, naturally they're disorganized, right? Like that's their attachment theory, or like their relationship attachment theory that they have, because they are coming from a state where here's this like level of security that they have in their own blanket and comfort of their culture and generation, and now they're getting thrown into a different culture and generation, right? So naturally they're a disorganized type, which meant a lot of the things that I embodied were a little bit disorganized in thoughts and beliefs. And while they were trying to fit me into those beliefs, I was trying to break out of those boxes, because I was like, God, this does not fit well for me. I don't know if I want to be this like do good daughter, not rock the boat, get married, married to a doctor, find a rich man, and then just like settle with your life. Like I was like, nope, not for me. Not something that I want to call into my life, and not something that I believe is my purpose. And my parents, just like most of that generation, was like, you've got to find a good job, have the kids, find the husband, have the kids, and then just like settle. But also like stay in your lane was like the message too. And I've always kind of grown up with a very expressive life, an expressive nature, where creativity was a huge part of what allowed me to be able to dip into my own sense of self expression. And so breaking that was really, really interesting, because I've always been the rebellious one within the family, but rebellious in the sense that like I just didn't believe in the things that they were passing on to me, and I just wanted more. Like I just knew there was more. Like I knew there was more in life and more to experience, and I just didn't want to feel complacent about it all. And that's kind of the life I remember witnessing my parents have, was a sense of complacency. And I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. Not at all.
So you became a mother at a young age.
Yeah.
I'm curious, with all the expectations, the parental pressures, being a first generation kid, how is it that your parents received that? And also, how would you say that that experience also blossomed into what it is that you are doing today, especially talking about relationships, health, and motherhood?
Yeah. So I became a mom at 21. I always say that my first daughter was a beautiful surprise, because she definitely was not expected. I found out I was pregnant with her when I was 24 weeks pregnant. And I was shocked, obviously, because it's like, holy shit, you're pregnant and you're having a baby in 3 months. And so that was a complete shock to my entire livelihood. My parents, well, I mean, they received it as well as they could. They had hopes for me, I think, to not go down that same path that my sister did. My sister got pregnant out of wedlock as well. And so my parents were probably feeling like, oh, fuck, we fucked this one up too. Like here's the American born child that we would hope that would like pursue all the American dreams and all the things that they thought were American dreams. And yet she is pregnant. And so that like was really, really difficult for me, but it was also a blessing in disguise, because at that time when I was 21, I knew what I was going to be doing with my life already. I was a hairstylist. That was my first career. But she really fueled the entrepreneurship like passion within me. It was like, holy shit, I've got a kid. I'm responsible. I'm an adult now. I better really figure this out. And so that really helped to shape me as who I am now, and also gave me this deeper purpose in providing the women that I coach and the work that I do giving the women an opportunity to break free from their own conditioning, their own shame stories, their own traumas around sexuality, their own traumas around just intergenerational and dysfunctional family wounds, because that's what I kind of grew up with. And so she became the fuel that I needed to be able to like step into the role that I am today.
You are so open with your story medicine and your journey of embracing your body and also navigating transitions in your relationships. And so, well, first of all, I'm celebrating that because there are so many times where I'm like, I don't want to show up on social media. I just want to go into hiding, or I want to go into the cabin, into the woods, and just not have to deal with technology or putting my stuff out there because yeah, as an entrepreneur and a quote unquote influencer, it's like how much you really put yourself out there, and how much of that is a process of learning to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious how you find the balance in
Mm.
that, reclaiming self-love while also saying, this is me, this is my journey. Welcome to the shitstorm of my life. Even though we know it's so beautiful.
That's like there it there's something that I like always talk about, which is embodiment. And one of the things that holds really true for me is that when I'm not in alignment, when I'm not embodying my own truth, I feel completely blocked in my body. There is no way for me to be able to move. There's no way for me to be able to express myself creatively or function in my business if I'm not being radically transparent or honest with myself. And because I started off GoFitJo with full blown transparency in my wellness journey of, look, you guys all witness me as this incredibly successful director at Visco, because this is what happened at the time. I was a director at Visco, and so it's like you all witnessed me being a director at Visco, co-owning a business with my ex-husband now, and I have two daughters. I have like the fucking American dream life, right? And what people didn't know was I was going through anxiety and depression because I was so unhappy with myself. I was so unhappy with the way my life was unfolding because it was not what I wanted it to be. And so the first step for me was to gain a sense of self-love. I was giving my love out to everybody else, serving my community, serving my family, serving my partnerships, serving my business, serving my employees, serving the company. And the last person I was serving was myself. And I remember standing in front of the mirror thinking to myself, fuck, I'm turning into my mom. I am becoming the martyr that I never wanted to be. As a Filipino woman, I never wanted to be that martyr. I didn't want to see my mom and myself in a sense of how she was constantly tired, constantly bitching about her life, constantly bitching about her marriage. And that's who I was becoming. And so when I first like kind of proclaimed that I was on this wellness journey, which was also really huge for a lot of Asian Americans, right? Like as women, we're not taught to take time for ourselves. That's the last thing that we're supposed to do. And so when I came out saying like, I'm reclaiming my sense of self and loving myself, and this is what I'm gonna do to love myself, which is take care of my body, take care of my mental health, my emotional health, people were shocked. People were shocked because they thought I had it all. And I had everything that was on paper, what you're supposed to accomplish in life. And I was just unhappy. I was looking at myself like, who the fuck am I becoming? This is not bringing me joy. And so that was kind of the biggest like, oh shit moment for a lot of people, because I just went out there and I was like, I'm depressed, I'm dealing with this, but y'all see this happy face. And that is your projection of what you see in me. And it's time to like break that projection because I need to get real with you. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, that was really helpful because a lot of these women around me in my communities were just replaying their should stories of what they should do, how they should behave, what they should accomplish, how they should feel about their bodies. Everything was all about performance and achievement. And I was like, fuck that. I cannot have that as part of my life anymore. I need to be able to be happy from within and embody that all the way through. And so when it comes to like sharing my story online, I think there is a feeling of vulnerability that I know is what sets us all free from our cages, from our own prisons that we put ourselves in when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to our sexuality, when it comes to our relationships, and not just romantic relationships, but familiar relationships and professional relationships. I always believed like human first and human story first was always going to be what is important to drive a future forward.
Yeah, I have just started my pleasure journey. I feel like I'm in my 30s, and I've been on this journey now for like 2, 3 years. I have my own pleasure coach as well, and Nguyen, who you know,
Ah.
and and as I am bringing pleasure, the concept of pleasure, to my own clients, what I have found repeatedly is that people have a challenging time even unpacking what that even means, or they start to feel bad whenever they're sad, like, oh, I'm not in my pleasure. And so we tend to believe that pleasure is just about feeling good and just about being in your joy. And we don't like to show the shadow parts of ourselves, the grief, which I believe grief can be a form of pleasure when we allow ourselves to feel. Or when we talk about pleasure, it's in the context of like pleasuring ourselves and like
Mm.
getting that orgasm. And I know for myself, I have a lot of healing to do around that. Like I still have shame when I even think about touching myself in that way. And side note, I got influencer status recently because a sex toy company is sending me a toy and they're like, we like you. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to write a post about me reclaiming this?
Yes, you are.
So how would you define pleasure for anybody who is new to this journey?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think pleasure is all about sensation and it is actually all about feeling good, but I also think it's about feeling good from within. And it's about finding joy and pleasure from within and embodying that so that it radiates from the inside out. And when it comes to pleasure and when it comes to finding pleasure in my life, and I guess how one can activate that. And I dipped into this a little bit, but I've experienced trauma since for as long as I could remember. I was molested at 8 years old, and then I was raped at 15. And then I grew up in domestic violence. And so my life has always been filled with some sort of trauma. And the thing that got me out of it was leaning into pleasure. And leaning into pleasure, not in a sexual sense, but in a sense of what is the silver lining in this? What is this pain teaching me? Because on the opposite of pain is pleasure. You can find pleasure in the pain, and you can find pleasure in the grief. I love what you said earlier about the grief part. And currently, right now, as I'm experiencing the early stages of divorce, it's been the probably the hardest to lean into the pleasure in that moment because there is a lot of grief. There's a lot of mourning that has to happen in between all that. And it's funny because you said something about like hiding away in a cabin. And so, I'm in my current divorce process. It's the first like maybe 5 months of it. And about a week and a half ago, I finally took off to go process by myself. No therapist, no coach, no friends, nothing, no family members, no one, no other partners around me, and just went to the cabin in the woods in the snow and was just in my winter. And I just remember thinking, like, this is a week where I need to dig in and find pleasure. and I need to find pleasure in the process, because I've decided to make a change in my life so that I could really find freedom and happiness for myself, independent of a relationship and independent of the stress of having to carry another adult human's weight. And it was in that moment where I realized I can create pleasure in my body and I can create joy in my body. I have everything within me to do that. And it is like laughing through the fucking tears sometimes and being able to just sink in and really allow yourself to emote. And to me, I think it's when you work through your emotions is when that pleasure gets activated, because then you're able to access all this beautiful feeling that you have inside, even in the fucking messy part of the arena and the dirt and the grime that's all around you. And you're just like, you know what? There's that little glimmer. Maybe it's just dancing. For me, it's dance. I like have to dance and I have to have music. But it's all about activating the senses for me.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper into the transition of your relationship. It's so weird. Even I don't want to say the word divorce, but
Let's just
also
keep saying it really quick.
I know,
Divorce.
right? Divorce.
Divorce.
Divorce. Well, my partner and I have been together for over 10 years now, and we've been to so many weddings where we've seen divorces. And so we're just like, whenever people ask us when we're going to get married, we're just like, we're practically a married couple already. I mean, does it have to be huge and ceremonial? Or maybe it's that fear, or maybe we just put so much pressure on what marriage is supposed to be like that. Like one of my best friends is getting married soon. I'm going to be her officiant. And she was all like, hey, June, what do you think about till death do us part? And I was like, I don't know, that makes my body contract. I mean, what if it doesn't
Yeah.
work out? I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, but we said at the altar till death do us part. And we're just like, what could an alternative vow look like? And also, where the heck does this even come from?
Yep.
So actually, let's
Let's
just
just
go
dive.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's really funny because I remember one time, you know, I work on sex, love, and relationships. That's my focus. And I think one of the biggest feelings of, I guess, shame that I felt was like, fuck, I'm asking for a divorce. And this is my area of expertise is relationships. Like, what the hell? And I felt very much so like an imposter syndrome. I felt like a huge wave of imposter syndrome, knowing that I was going to be asking for a divorce from my partner, for my husband. So to give a background, we have been together for 18 years, married for 12, and we have just grown apart. And the ways in which we try to come together has just been really difficult over time. And also, I've just had to, unfortunately and fortunately, I'm going to celebrate this. I've had to enforce a boundary, and I don't like enforcing boundaries because I know that for myself, I express them very clearly and with clarity and with lots of compassion and give lots of chances. And the fact that I had to enforce a boundary just felt really terrible. And I'm saying this because I know for a lot of women who might be listening to this, and maybe for a lot of women who might not really like be listening and who are tuning in or whatever, boundaries are really difficult to enforce, especially with loved ones. They're scary to enforce. And so in that, I made the choice to transition our relationship from a married couple to more co-parenting. And it's interesting because I remember, you know, when he and I were talking about it, because we've had many relationship transitions. We've been non-monogamous for about 2.5 years. I've explored the realm of polyamory, which for me was like, fuck yeah, this is my route. This is the way I like relationship structures. There's absolutely no shame in having multiple partners. That is how I thrive. And so we have been in relationship transition for forever, if we really think about it. You know, our relationship has evolved from parenting to a married couple to a polyamorous couple, and here we are now transitioning yet again. And life is a series of transitions. And so when it came to just marriage in general, I remember working through a course with my clients and putting together this course. And one thing that I said was, you know, it's really funny to me that a successful marriage is deemed when a couple dies till death do you part. And that's the
Yes.
success point, right? It's like, why is that the success point of a married couple when they die? Like, shouldn't they be living? Shouldn't they be growing? Shouldn't they be evolving? Shouldn't they be moving through life together? That's how you celebrate it. It's not till death do you part. It's like till you thrive, right? Like, it's like, let's thrive through this, or whatever like value you need to make about that, commitment to like growth or whatever. And when it came to this decision, I mean, there was a lot of things that came up for me, a lot of shame, around what I do as a profession, as my profession. There's a lot of shame in that. There was a lot of shame in the traditional Filipino Catholic upbringing of like, oh my God, you're getting a divorce now. Like, what is that, right? And I'm like, do you want me to be unhappy, or do you want me to be thriving? Like, what is it here that you really want me to do? Because I cannot teach my daughters to be in a relationship that I know is expiring, or at least this format of the relationship is expiring. Me and John, we are excellent fucking collaborators and creators together, and we are excellent parents together, but we have become really bad romantic partners to each other. And so when I looked at the relationship in a like bird's eye view from 30,000 feet down, it was like, what parts of this relationship can we actually keep so that we can continue to thrive together in relationship throughout the rest of our life? And what do we need to subtract because certain things are not working? And for us, it was our marriage. And we have said this before, that like our marriage failed us. The institution of marriage failed us. The confinements of what was expected unconsciously when it comes to a married couple has failed us, because so much of what we got married into were a lot of these unconscious beliefs and systems that we had adopted over time. And although we've tried really hard to unravel it, there's still so much of that conditioning that is like woven in the DNA of our relationship that we were like, okay, let's just remove that part. That's not serving us anymore. We've got to get rid of it. And at least for me, it was like, I really need to get rid of that part. That's not serving me. And as a mom, as a woman, as somebody that I know is supposed to teach and nurture my children about growth and happiness and joy and all of those things, like I could not do that feeling confined in my marriage and feeling like I was sacrificing that piece of happiness that I knew would probably foster. And I don't really know, like, who knows what's on the other side, but I had to give that a chance. Like, if there was just some like glimmer of maybe this is going to be better on the other side for both of us, that is something that I had to provide myself and do.
So would you say that you were able to go through this divorce while still keeping both of your dignities intact, or would you say it's something that you're still navigating and learning about?
I think one of the things that we had talked about was, it's funny because one of the things that I do, and whether this is like not a good thing or a good thing, but I think it's a beautiful thing. When I work with my clients and I talk about their relationship visions and we work through kind of what that looks like in a session, I also actually include, what would your breakup look like? What would your ideal breakup or separation or transition look like? And of course they're like, what the fuck? And for me, I'm like, well, here's the thing. If you set the intention in the beginning of your relationship, then at least it anchors you somewhere, right? Like you have the ability to at least go back to that and say, hey, we notice that we're going through this phase where we're thinking about transitioning our relationship and no longer being romantic. Let's go back to the intention that we had about the breakup that we would want. And for John and I, when we opened up our relationship, we knew that, and we always have known that, like for us, there is always going to be the possibility that we will not make it till death do us part. We knew that. We knew that, and we knew that we were going to be really, really like intentional about trying to commit to each other as much as we could. But the one thing that we forgot in that relationship structure was, what does it mean to commit to ourselves first? What does it mean to honor our own integrity as individuals before coming into this partnership? That was like the one thing that we didn't really think about. And so in 2018, when we recommitted to our marriage, when we opened up our relationship, we really like leaned into, what is the commitment that we have to ourselves first? And so that's kind of how that transition was like. And when it came to us talking about the divorce, I wanted to consciously uncouple, meaning that I didn't want to destroy things on the way out. We have had a lifetime together, 18 fucking years. Like, that is a lifetime together. And we're still going to continue to have a lifetime together because we have two wonderful, wonderful daughters together. And we're going to still raise them to the best of our abilities together. And so in this process, we are doing our best to honor ourselves and each other and the history and then the future that looks independent of each other, but still has some form of family unit intact, because we're going to be family no matter what.
Yeah. So my relationship, people ask, how is it I've been with my partner for so long and like putting my stuff out there, right? But when we first got together, I had just come out of a big breakup. And I honestly thought that my partner and I, like, he was just somebody that I went to because I was feeling lonely. And we were friends. And yeah, first took up, I was all like, what if this isn't going to work out? Like, I'm just going to go somewhere else. And he said, okay, well, we'll just take it one day at a time. And one day turned into over 10 years. And for me, it was so liberating to be in partnership with somebody who wasn't like, oh, but we're going to stay together forever and ever. Because I feel like my former partners, I seriously thought that some of them were going to commit suicide when I ever brought up breakup. I'm actually not in communication with any of them whatsoever. So as I was brainstorming with my best friend, what is an alternative to till death do us part? I was like, what about, I don't know, till next lifetime? No, wait, that's still a lot. One day at a time. I don't know. And so it's even just reclaiming what a healthy relationship can look like. And maybe this is very Buddhist of me to say, to not be attached to the outcome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's really Buddhist. I think it's actually, I think that's the most beautiful way, right? Like, when we are attached to the outcome, that's when expectations happen. And that's when disappointment happens, because we have an attachment to that. And that's when it's dangerous. That's like when it's really dangerous, because then you're working towards this idea rather than the feeling of what's actually happening within the relationship. Then you're no longer present with what's actually there. And I think, sometimes, like, what I often, what I like, what I, when I was coming through this conclusion of like, fuck, I don't think this relationship is going to, like, quote unquote, make it. At least the marriage isn't going to make it. I remember asking one of my clients, because she was describing something to me, and I said, I have to ask you a question. And she said, sure. And I said, it's a hard question. So do I have your consent? And she was like, of course. I said, are you having an affair with his potential? And that was the question that I had to reflect back to myself big time. And as a coach, I mean, you're a coach as well. We see the potential in people so much. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to witness and see. But in that same light, people have to be coachable. People have to want the change. People want to have to grow as well. And in my partnership, in my marriage, we were just growing apart and way too rapidly. Like, the distance between all of that was just different. And we ended up seeing that what he wanted was something different, what I wanted was something different. And we just couldn't make that work, and boundaries needed to happen and boundaries needed to be enforced, which again, I think is so difficult, especially as a woman of color, especially as a Filipino woman, when boundaries are not taught growing up.
Mhm. So, what would you say then to somebody who's listening who is on the verge of wondering whether or not it's time for them to walk away, maybe cultivate that relationship with themselves, or when it's time to put in some work? Because I think that we forget relationships take work. Intimate
Yeah.
relationships, friendships, like when do you put in the towel?
Yeah, I mean, all of that. I mean, I love that you mentioned that relationships take work, because they do. And I think, if anyone's on the fence, or if they're feeling a sense of discontent, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, am I willing to put in the work? Do I want to put in the work for this? And if the answer is still yes, then invest in that work, whatever that might look like. I mean, go to therapy, hire a coach, work together, and see if both partners, or all partners, depending on your relationship structure, are willing to do the work on themselves individually and also put in within the relationship. And then if you've sat there and you've already been in this same cycle, in this same pattern, the biggest question to ask yourself is, how much longer am I willing to stay in this pattern or in this cycle? How many times can I go over this again? Because oftentimes I think, when we reach an end of a relationship, when we need to transition to something different, you've been in that cycle over and over and over again. And you got to just like ask yourself, do I want to get off this hamster wheel? Like, do I need to make a change? And what is that change? It might not mean to like transition the relationship or end it. It might just mean to transition it and evolve it into something different. Like, put the fucking plant out of that container, move it to another container that works really well for you. And then like check in with your body. What is your body saying? Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? What do you need to feel secure in your body? And if for whatever reason the energy of the other person isn't making you feel safe or secure, and I don't mean like, I mean, if you're in a violent relationship, if you're in an abusive relationship, then like definitely like check yourself and get out, because that obviously there's safety there, that physical safety or emotional safety. But you will know when your body feels safe, when your nervous system isn't activated all the time. You will know when you're in a flow state. And if you're starting to feel like you're not, just check in with yourself. What is my body saying right now? Because that body of yours is smart as fuck, and we don't ever listen to it. We want to listen to our head. We want to listen to what is it that we should do. We want to listen to societal stories. We want to listen to family stories. But if you take a moment to just pause and tune in and check in with your body, like, you'll know. And once you know, like Glennon Doyle said in her book, Untamed, once you know, you can't unknow. And like, that is the truth for sure.
So, what are some of the things that you are doing to stay grounded in this transition? And also, what is it that you have learned to release?
Hmm. To stay grounded in this transition, I continue to celebrate. I continue to celebrate, and I continue to honor the joy. And I also honor the grief and the mourning. I think oftentimes a lot of people want to fast forward the mourning process so they can get through to the next life of whatever that looks like. And I have been really just sitting with those feelings and emotions, journaling them when I can. I've set up a support squad. Like, I've enlisted like a whole team of girlfriends and a really awesome therapist to just be there with me when I'm feeling like I need to collapse. Soothing myself with a bath, self-pleasure, tapping into my body, giving myself just the space and holding space for myself when I am going through my shit. And also continuing things one day at a time, knowing that regardless of the way I'm currently feeling, it's one step towards the life I ultimately want to create, even though I don't know what the fuck that looks like yet. Because I think for a lot of people, when they go through something like this, they're like, I don't know what the next stage is going to look like. And I'm like, I don't even know either, you know, and that's okay. And it's exciting, and it's also really scary. But when I think about like all of our lives, we've been through transition before. We've been through it before. We know how it feels like to start something new. And granted, it's a big new, but it's a new chapter. So that's what I've been leaning into. And then just like honoring my body for what she needs in that damn moment. Like if she needs to rest, she's going to curl up and rest. And if she needs to do, she's going to curl up and do. So, you know, I've just been really kind of tuning in and giving her like the love she needs of whatever that is in that moment.
How is it that you can do that though without feeling guilty about especially showing up for others as a mother, as a coach, well, now just a partner to yourself, but how is it that you can just like drop everything and be like, okay, I'm just going to curl up in a ball now unapologetically?
You know, I give myself my therapist said something really awesome, which was like, girl, so she's a Black woman, so I'm gonna say this like her because this is the way it came out and I needed it. Like I needed her Black woman energy because it's like super, super fierce. She was like, girl, I'm gonna let you grieve for like 2 days, but you gotta get the fuck up. You're gonna have to get the fuck up at some point. And I like those words will like go through my head. And so it's like, you know, if I need to just like sit and collapse for 15 minutes, I'm gonna go sit and collapse for 15 minutes and then I'm gonna get the fuck up. And then in terms of like other stuff, I mean, I'm a pretty good compartmentalizer. I've been pretty good at that since my hairstyling days. And so I try my best to make sure that I'm just giving myself time. Like I'm not launching anything new at the moment. I'm focusing on my one-on-one clients. I'm doing what feels good for me in this moment, which is also really hard because I'm so used to a certain level of performance, and that is not available for me right now. And that's the hardest part. And the guilt and the shame, they're not like, they're still present. They still come up from time to time. And I just have to have a conversation with my guilt and actually say, what are you trying to tell me right now? And is this guilt mine, or is this guilt from another should story? Or is this guilt from some other voice that isn't actually my own voice telling me that? And when I can pick apart where that guilt comes from, I'm like, cool, I'm going to put you on the shelf right now because guilt and worry are two useless emotions that aren't productive at all. And that's just shaming me. And there's no point of that because, you know, like we talked about earlier, like you want to shame me? Like I'll shame myself first, left, right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, before we pressed record, I was like, okay, let me just, if anybody comes out to shame me or tell me that I'm problematic or I did something wrong, too late because I already did it first.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have anything to defend because all of my stuff is already out there. Thank you for affirming my initial thoughts.
Yeah. And you know, I think one of the things that this thing is like teaching me, actually, the biggest thing is boundaries and asking for support. Two things that I feel like as a woman of color was really hard to ask for.
Yeah, I have come to learn as I have been supporting other women of color with stepping into their story medicine and starting their businesses. The biggest challenge is actually not money, but our ability to receive, whether it's money, but most importantly, support, compliments, rest. Until we can learn how to simply receive, then nothing else is going to matter. We're going to self-sabotage ourselves along the way. And I'm only saying this from experience as somebody who has sabotaged herself over and over again until I had to see the patterns and look at, okay, what is my relationship first and foremost with myself?
Yeah.
And I cannot depend on my partner to fulfill that void. I cannot ask for my clients to fulfill that. I got to throw myself a party every other week.
Yeah. It's funny what came up for me as you were saying that was my relationship to self-pleasure and
Yeah.
how that actually allowed me to cultivate a better relationship to asking for support. So similar to you, I didn't really reclaim my sexuality until like 33, to be honest. Um,
That's how old I am.
yeah,
Jesus
so
year.
that was like 5 year or 4 years ago. Like 5 years ago is
Yeah.
probably when I started to reclaim my sexuality. And for a long time, I believed my sexuality and pleasure was supposed to be given to me by somebody else. Like that story of like and sexual pleasure, right? Like either a man's supposed to provide that to me or I'm supposed to provide it to a man. But like there was no me giving myself pleasure. Like there was none of that connection. And so it was when I started to really kind of lean into a self pleasure practice and also learned how to receive pleasure from other partners in our exploration of non-monogamy. That's when that healing journey began, because I was like, oh, that's what it feels like to fully surrender into pleasure and actually receive it, because it's given as an offering. It's not given as a obligation, and it's not given as an attachment to something else, right? And so when I finally leaned into that, when I finally was able to just receive pleasure, it became easier for me to ask for support and to ask for what I needed, because then I was able to understand and cultivate that own sense of self pleasure for me. And I was like, oh shit, if I want somebody to come in and have a dance party, I can start dancing by myself and then invite somebody into that. Oh, if I want to have a
Yes.
really beautiful sexual experience for myself, I can have that for myself and then invite somebody into that. Do I need cuddles today? Okay, I can actually ask somebody to cuddle me today, and then it became slightly easier to be like, I mean, in this process, I've just been asking my girlfriends, like, hey, I got to move out of my house. Can you help me with that? And they're like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you ask? And I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't think that I could. Like, I had to do all this by myself. And they're just like, hello, you have all of us to help you figure out what your life is going to be like. You're not doing this alone. And I'm like, great. I'm going to enlist all my girlfriends as my life partners in the future, because they're going to be my non-romantic platonic life partners. But it
Yes.
was just like that idea of receiving pleasure for the first time and cultivating that within myself really allowed me to then sink into asking for what I needed so that I could at least just elevate some sort of pleasure in my life.
Mm. So I like to ask this question to everybody as we close out. If you can envision yourself as a future ancestor, which we all are ancestors in the comeback, what would you say to Joe, who was maybe in that cabin,
Mm,
wondering what is going to happen next?
mm,
What should I do?
mm, mm. When I was in that cabin, I really tapped into my ancestors that time. And for Filipino lineage, we come from 500 years of feminism as babaylans. We are warriors, we are shamans, we are healers, and we are storytellers, actually. And so there was a moment where I was meditating on some plant medicine, and literally, like, I looked down at myself and I was like, you are a phoenix rising. I don't know what you think you're doing at this moment, but that's okay. And you've got this. You have the support of your entire lineage here. And you are going to write a fucking story that not only you are going to be proud of, but your daughters will be proud of. And that you are going to also liberate so many women from their pain and from their shame and from their own cages. And you are going to unleash the shit out of everyone there. So right now, heal yourself. Heal yourself, because you've got a journey.
Yes. And I also want to acknowledge that you have been doing this work, that you've risen over and over again. There's so many other questions that I had, but y'all go to Joe's blog. I mean, look, boob jobs, cervical cancer. Like so many other, like, oh, suddenly got me percolating there. But also alternative ways of finding healing within ourselves, first and foremost, and knowing that, as I say in every single one of these, that you do not have to go about it alone. So thank you so much, Jo, for sharing your story medicine with us, for sharing your transitions, your unfolding, allowing us to witness you rise from the ashes. And I invite you all to write down what an epic breakup can look like.
Yeah. It's a really powerful exercise because then you can manifest it. You can really manifest the feeling of what you'd like to feel like when you go through a transition, and it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be as hard as you think.
Yeah. And just because you write it out doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. So also write down, first of all, write down what it is you want from a relationship, and then ask yourself if you're giving yourself that same love and attention.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you.
Yeah, go follow Jo at Instagram.com/GoFitJo or GoFitJo.com. And I'm so excited to bring you back to see your wings a year from today.
Thank you.